What is up, guys? Welcome to the channel and welcome to my garage. My name is Matt Zom, and in today's video, we'll be showing you how to install a shift light on your sport bike. We will be showing you on my Gen 1 Hayabusa here, but this should apply to most sport bikes out there. Well, especially, they need to have coil-on plug ignition. Now, your wire coloring will be probably different, and your method of wiring it and routing it through there will be different. But for the most part, the methods I use will apply. Now, I did choose Schnitz Racing's shift light here. I chose Schnitz for a number of reasons, including the fact that it controls your auto shift if you use that, which I don't use auto shift yet, but I do plan on using that in the future. So that's going to be a great expansion. I also chose their dual stage shift light because it has a launch mode. And what the launch mode lets you do is it lets you know when you're holding your throttle at the right RPM. This is great if you don't use a two-step for launch. What a two-step is you hold a button, it engages the system, and you just whack on the throttle, and it holds the RPM right where you want it. Well, if you don't have one of those, this is your next best thing. Now, like I said, this will apply to most sport bikes, and this will apply to most shift lights out there, even though I chose Schnitz. The wire coloring, again, will probably be different, but this will work for you. So in this video, I'm going to show you I am going to skip some basics. I'm going to skip some stuff like stripping your bike down and getting at your wires. But I am going to show you some basics on wiring repair. I am going to show you how to plan the job. I'm going to show you how to get it done right. And if you chose Schnitz Racing's light, I'm going to show you how to work the thing. So we're going to kick things off with how you plan on mounting it. Let me switch the camera. Now I'm going to install it right here on top of the dash, and it fits in there perfectly. I did have to remove a bit of finishing trim, but really that's negligible because this is a race bike. And I'm going to be routing it under here. We're going to go under here and under the frame and over top of the engine, where we're going to be attaching it to a coil. I am also going to run a lead from behind the dash here to where we're connecting into the coil. I'm also going to run a lead from the battery to where we're going to be connecting it on top of the coil to make things easy. Now that we've got her scantily clad, I can show you our plan of attack. If you look here, my light has 5 wires. The black is for ground, the red is for power, the green is for tach signal, the white is for the dual stage for launch mode. If you don't have dual stage, forget about this part of the video. But that we're going to tap into our vehicle speed sensor signal line. And then the brown, we're not going to use in this video either. That is for auto shift control. You'll probably only have that one if you have the Schnitz Racing light. But we'll do that in a future video. For this one, I'm just going to tape it off for safekeeping for later. For power and tach signal, we are going to tap into the power side of the number 1 coil to the ground side of the number 1 coil. I chose the number 1 coil. I already have the connector off and snipped off because I needed to do a wiring repair there. You can use any one of your coils because 1 spark equals 2 rotations of your engine. So as long as it's reading 1 spark, it knows how many times the engine's turning. So I am going to take the vehicle speed sensor signal from the dash harness. The reason I'm doing this is because it's just taped up. It'll be easy to get at, and it's nice and safe here behind the cowl, behind the dash. The other spot for me would be closer to where I'm going to be making my connections. However, the harness is really nice and safe there. This is where the sensor taps into the harness here, and it's really nice and tight and plastic, and I'd prefer to keep it that way as opposed to getting real invasive and destroying a part of the harness that's pretty sturdy. So I will be running a lead along with the harness. Set that there. We're going to run it through the triple tree, under the frame, and right on top of the engine where the coils are, because that's where I'm going to make all my main connections. So I'm going to run a lead from the vehicle speed sensor signal. Along with that, I am going to also run a lead from the negative battery terminal, which is under the seat, under the gas tank, along the side of the frame, and right up here where we're going to make our connections into the coil. Before we get it done on the bike, let's show you guys how to do some basic repairs and connections on the bench. So Schnitz provides some really nice connectors for a clean install. The one connector they provide fits perfectly on my Suzuki Hayabusa coils. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that it'll fit most Suzukis, but just don't quote me on that. Now, if your light did not come with connectors, don't fret. You can still do a nice clean install using the factory connector. However, you will have to buy terminals. Schnitz provides the terminals in their kit that go in the connector, but you can track these down online, and you can do it the same way I do it if your kit didn't come with these connectors, or if these connectors don't happen to fit your Cowie or Honda or something like that. So I'll show you how to disassemble a connector. Now, like I said, if you're going to reuse your factory connector, don't fret. You can disassemble it and reuse it. If you look at the connector, you'll see you got a little yellow clip. I have a yellow clip. It might be a different connector for your color for your connector, but there's a little clip in there that helps retain the terminals. Then if you see below the clip is a little opening there, that is where the blade inserts into the terminal. Effectively the same concept for a male style connector, but I'm just going to do the female style connector because that's what I need to do, and it's a little bit more complex because it's tighter area. But you got to pop that clip out. Careful not to lose it. Then if you look in there again, you can see the terminals. Hopefully you can see the terminals. And above the terminals are little plastic clips. You can take something like a pick, which is what I have. They make terminal tools for connectors. For me, the pick works just fine. So you insert it in and you get it onto the tab. I don't have enough hands, so I use my mouth. And you pull the wire with the terminal out the back. Once you get the terminal out the back of the connector, you can look at the terminal and you can see that the crimp on there is pretty much permanent. There's no reusing that terminal, so you're just going to have to go ahead and snip it off and track down a new one. It'll probably come with your new connectors. If your kit didn't come with connectors, it'll come with the connectors that you track down on the internet. So you're going to have 2 wires going in your coil. You're going to have power, and you're going to have a ground, which is switch to activate the coil. So you're going to take the power wire from your tack light, and you're going to twist it together with the power wire to the coil. You're then going to take your new terminal, and if you look closely at the terminal, you can see there's two sets of crimps. Hopefully you guys can see it. Hopefully I'm holding it right, but you can see there's two sets of tabs there. There's these bigger tabs and then these smaller tabs. The smaller tabs, you're going to use a wire crimper. You need to use a wire crimper. And you can see on mine, there's a spot for non-insulated 22 to 10 gauge wire. What you're going to do, you're going to put your twisted pair in the terminal, taking the crimper. You're going to put the round end towards the open end and the pointy end towards the back. And then you're just going to give it you're going to keep it nice and straight, give it an even squeeze, and it will crimp those tabs down for you and make a really good connection. I will also take a pair of needle nose pliers, a nice small set of small needle nose pliers, and really kind of give the edges of the crimp a good squeeze. Make sure that that's holding the wire on there tight. Give it a little tug from the terminal. Make sure that the connection is good and it's not going to slip off. Then what you do is you slide that seal up into where the larger skinny tabs are, and then you're going to crimp that around the seal, and that's going to give you a nice firm connection there for your twisted pair. So you're going to do the same thing with the other side of the connector. You're going to take the ground wire for the coil, and you're going to connect it to the tack signal wire to the shift light. You're going to twist it up. You're going to do the same thing with that terminal. Now, once you have this looks like crap, but this is just something to show you guys. You have it crimped, you have it all together. Make sure you have the right wire going in the right side of the connector. So before you disconnect your terminals from the connector, make sure you remember which wire goes to which side. Then the terminal will only go in the connector one way. So make sure it's either the right way up or the other way. You slide it in the back, and then you push it in. You should hear a click. You probably didn't hear that click, but it clicked. Then you're going to take that little tab you popped out before, and you're going to slide that back into place when you get your terminals back in there. What that does is it prevents the little clip, the little tab that holds them in from popping out, and it keeps the terminal locked in there. Working with the coil connectors will be the more delicate part of the process. The next connection I'm going to show you is pretty common. Most people know how to do it already, but in case you don't, I'm going to go through it real quick. And that is a butt connection. That is where you take the end of one wire and you connect it to the end of another wire using a connector. There are two types of butt connectors that I know of, at least. There is a solder style butt connector and a crimp-on style butt connector, and they do exactly what they sound like. So you'll need crimpers to do the crimp-on style connection, and essentially all you're going to do is you're going to strip a little bit of wire, twist it, then you're going to slide it into the sheathing, into the metal area, which is actually what you're going to crimp. You're going to take your crimpers, and you're going to find the right spot on your crimpers. There'll be little colors, and the butt connectors come colored, so red, blue, green, yellow. And just make sure you match it up with the right spot so you get the right crimp. Give it a squeeze. And you have your first wire in there connected. You do the same thing to the other side. And this style butt connector is a heat shrink type connector. Not all of them are heat shrink, but this is a weather heat shrink style connector. You can take a torch or a heat gun and you can melt it down, or not melt it, but you can heat it up and shrink it. And you'll see right there that it gives you a nice weather tight seal. And this thing's pretty good connection. Crimp-on connectors will work for most people, but I prefer to use solder style connectors. I think they give a little bit more permanent connection. So I have two here for an example. The blue is for a larger gauge. The red is for a smaller gauge. I'm going to use an oversized one just for ease of demonstration. So you're going to attack it a little bit differently. What you're going to do is you're going to take the butt connector and you're going to slide it over one of the wires. You're going to take your other wire and you're going to twist the pair together. You're going to want to strip a little bit more off than you would for a crimp-on connector because you want enough wire there to be able to twist the pair together. You don't want a ton of wire there though because you want the seals that are on the connector to make it over the wire shielding. So then what you do is you slide the connector over where the solder is over the connection. And then you take your torch and you heat it up. And as you heat it up, just like the other one, you're going to want to spread that heat around and you're not going to want to burn it. You're going to try your best not to burn it. You see it shrink. It's going to be a little loose fit because I used a bigger style connector. But you can see the solder isn't quite melted yet, but you can see the seals are melted. So we'll keep heating it. We're going to focus a little heat. There we go. The solder is starting to go. And there you have it. You have a good connection. I'm going to let it cool a little bit. I'm not going to tug on it right away because that solder will peel away. But once it cools, you have a really, really good connection. The next connection I was going to show you is the T-tap. However, the microphone wasn't on when I did the install. So this is what it looks like when it's connected. Essentially what it is, it's a splice. Inside of that little clamp there is a little metal piece that you can see. It's got a little channel in it. And what it does is the wire slides in that channel. And then when you give it a squeeze with pliers, it slides the wire into that channel, cutting the sheathing and making contact with the wire. So if you look at it, you can tell it looks a little bit like a clamp. You take one side and the other side and you give it a light squeeze with the pliers until you get it to click and you got a good connection. Then to splice into that, this is my lead from the TAC to my vehicle speed sensor signal. I connected the connector like a simple butt connection minus the other side. And you can see it's got a male blade in there. That male blade fits right in that little slot there. And now I have a good connection for my vehicle speed sensor signal. Now that you guys know how to make some basic repairs and wiring connections, time to get it done on the bike. I already ran my harness, I already ran my leads to the ground on the battery and to my vehicle speed sensor signal line. All that there is to do is make the terminations. I'm going to start with the easy ones, the butt connectors. Then I'm going to go to the coil and do that repair. And from there, we'll tap into the vehicle speed sensor harness and we'll give her a test. All right, we got her all wired up, somewhat cleaned up, nice and tidy, and I can show you what it will look like. So you can see my harness here. I got the harness along with the leads for the ground and the vehicle speed sensor signal. So the ground runs along the chassis to my battery, and the vehicle speed sensor lead runs along with the harness. I tapped it in. Power and TAC signal are tapped into the connector for a nice cleaner look than cutting in and tapping into the harness, the vehicle harness. While I was at it, I took the old factory connector and I replaced my broken number 2 connector that was taped up before. But so the harness runs down under the frame here, around the front, through the triple tree, And you can see I got my lead here and my harness here. And then you can see that the lead taps into the vehicle speed sensor signal using the T-tap that they provided in the kit, which you can also get separately, but it was nice that they provided in the kit. And I'm going to tidy this up a little bit and put the dash on and put her back together a little bit, and we'll get her ready to test. I got her put back together enough to fire her up, so let's show you what it's going to look like. Fairing and cowl are still off, so it's not a complete look. But you can see I got the light mounted right on top of the dash. It's a good spot. And to turn it on, you need to have your kill switch on already. Turn the ignition on. Boom, we got power. Let's see what she says. 0.00. The engine is not moving. So let's fire her up real quick. All right. It says just over $1,000. We got 1.2, 1.1, 1.2. So that's 1,100, 1,200. Looks like she's dead on. Now let's see if the shift light feature works. I already played with it a little bit, so let's see if the launch mode works. I got it set for 4,000 RPM. Looks like launch mode is working. So it is midwinter where I live, and I can't fully test the thing because I can't get it to the track to test the shift points. When I do get a chance to test it, I'll drop a note in the description, let you guys know what I think, and I'll probably bring you guys along as well. But in the meantime, we're going to wrap the video up with showing you guys how to program your unit if you bought a Schnitz racing light. If you didn't buy the dual stage light, don't worry about it. Just ignore the couple of steps about launch control, launch mode. So to program it, you're going to need to turn the bike on with the engine off. And to enter programming, you're going to hold both buttons. And then the first mode that's going to be there is going to be your launch mode. So that's going to be the RPM that the light's telling you to hold. So it comes from the factory set for 3,000. I'm going to bump it up a little bit to say 3,500. Let's make it 33. There we go. Nah, we'll just go to 3,000 to make it easy. Okay. The next one is your RPM limit or threshold for your launch mode. So right now it comes from the factory with a 200 RPM threshold, meaning that it's set for 3,000. It will come on at 2,800 and it will start blinking when you're over 3,200. If you want a larger threshold, you can give yourself a little bit more room. That'll be 300 over and 300 under, but I'm going to leave it at 200 and experiment with it from there. Now, the next mode is your cylinder pulse mode. So if you're wiring it into your tach signal, it might not get one pulse for every RPM or every other RPM. It's probably going to be getting multiple pulses from the ECM. So you need to know how many pulses it's getting. You have to look that up if you're wiring it in that way. But we wired it in. You can have up to 8 pulses. So theoretically an 8-cylinder sending all the pulses for each cylinder. But we wired it directly into the coil. So we know we're getting 1 pulse for every 2 rotations of the engine. So we're going to leave it right there because that's exactly where the manual says to do it if you are doing a coil direct connection. The next mode will be your shift points. So it comes set at 10.5. My bike runs it out to about 11.5. So I'm going to lift it up a bit. I'm going to hit it to 11, assuming that by the time my brain recognizes it's time to shift, it'll be a couple hundred RPM more, and I should be close but not falling off my power curve. And then you hold the buttons exit, and she's all programmed. That about does it for my shift light install. I won't be able to test it, like I said, until race season, but when I do, I'll definitely let you guys know how it goes. I'm pretty confident it's going to work, and I'm pretty happy with choosing Schnitz's product. Everything that it came with made for a really clean install, and I'm happy with how it came out. I'm very confident in how it's going to function. And I hope you thought this was informative, even if you didn't choose their light. The install should be pretty close to the same thing for you guys. So I hope it gives you some confidence to go and do it yourself. If you guys liked it, hit that like button. If you want more, hit subscribe. I'll be coming out with more videos. Thanks, guys.